Hey guys, welcome back to Subtractive Synthesis 101 with Sonic Academy. In this video we're going to start taking a look at some synthesizing bass lines. I think we're going to do 2 or 3 bass lines, and first one we're going to do is a very simple one. We'll start off with something simple, which is like a psytrance bass, and for that I'm going to be using Anna. So let's just initialize the preset. Now we'll start off with a simple saw wave, and I'm going to drop it by 1 octave. And what we need to do is we need to apply a filter to the saw wave and start using a modulation envelope on that filter. So let's give ourselves some notes to play with. I think we'll start with the wrong synth again. So let's go back to Anna. Probably around, no, maybe an octave lower. Yeah, probably an octave lower. Okay, let's give ourselves a pretty standard psytrance bass line. In fact, I don't need to do that many, I just need to loop 1 bar. So let's do that. And what I'll do is I'll shorten the notes just a little bit so that they don't start overlapping each other. So let's start with this. Might be a bit low, but let's see how we go. Let's go back to the Anna GUI. And what I want to do is I want to use the filter envelope here, because remember the envelope for the filter is hardwired in Anna. And we've got these different slopes to use, and these are the curves of the ADSR envelope. But I think I want to use a straight one. And for this sound, I probably want a 4-bar. I want a fairly steep filter, and I'm thinking that I might use let's just try the 4-pole standard for starters, and let's see what it sounds like. Now, if I just play the bass note by itself, what we want to do is we want to automate that cutoff value with the filter envelope. So first thing we need to do is give the envelope some value. So let's put it up about, I don't know, what's that, 30%. And we don't need any release, we don't need any attack, we want the bass sound to come on straight away. And let's pull the decay down like we've done before and see what this sounds like. Okay, that's probably getting there already. What we'll do is we'll bring in a kick drum. I've got a couple of loops set up as well, but we'll leave those off for now. The kick drum might be quite loud. Let's have a look. No, it's not. The bass sound is quite loud. Okay, let's tweak this a little bit, because we might need a little bit more envelope and a little bit less cutoff. And a lot of time when you're designing sounds, this is what you'll spend a lot of time doing. You'll set up your envelopes and your filter, and as you play the sounds through, you'll end up tweaking them so that they fit the track that you're doing. Okay, that's getting closer. What we're also going to do is we're going to assign some velocity to this cutoff value as well. So let's increase this. And then we'll go back into the MIDI clip, and we will use a similar technique to we used before. So switch this GUI for a second. And we will assign the velocity underneath these notes, so that the first note, the cutoff value, is going to be lower. And let's see what that sounds like. Let's try giving that a bit more, because it's not that apparent right yet. Where are we? Velocity. Let's go back to the MIDI clip. that's getting closer. So let's go back to the GUI again and do some more tweaking. Just turn it down a bit because it's clipping there. There's a fine line there, isn't there? It's kind of a little bit too much and a little bit too little at the same time. So what we might do is we might increase the envelope amount slightly and see if that can compensate for it. I think that's got it. So that's a fairly simple sound. So we've used a saw wave, and then we've used the low pass filter on the saw wave, and the low pass filter is controlled with the filter envelope to create a kind of pitch, a sweep down on each note. Let's bring in some loops and see what they sound like. Okay, what you'd probably do next, if you were going to put this into a mix, you'd actually take out some of the kind of mid-low range of that bass sound and maybe high pass it just a little bit to get it sitting in the mix, because it's very, very fuzzy at the moment, very kind of boomy at the bottom end. But that's not what we're doing here right now. We're just kind of getting the sounds in synthesis. So we will switch this one off, and what I'll do next is move over to silent, because I'm going to do a kind of all-round trance bass line. And what we'll do is we're going to initialize this patch so that we've just got a good old saw. I keep doing this, don't I? Look, live keeps tricking me. And what I think we'll do is we're going to use two saw waves on part A, and we're going to have them an octave apart. So let's choose a saw wave over here as well. Give it a voice, and take the second saw wave down an octave. And what we're going to do with the amp envelope is we're going to take the sustain down. So the attack's immediate. It's going to go up to the decay value and then slowly come back down to where we set the sustain value. So you can hear there's an initial attack, and then it kind of fades out a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a low pass filter. Now actually what I might do is I'm going to choose part B first, because what I want to do is copy the amp envelope from part A using the C button here, move over to part B and paste that over. Because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a stacked oscillator here. So we're going to add another saw wave, and we're going to give this one 5 voices, because the two oscillators on the first page, they're both a single voice. And while I'm here actually, I'm going to change the phase of one of them, because we're using two saw waves. Even though they're an octave apart, we might have some phasing issues. I think that's okay for now. So let's go back to part B. We've got 5 voices in this oscillator, and we will in fact, let's solo this so we can hear what we're doing. We're going to detune this. And then unsolo this. Okay, so you've already got a really nice, rich sound here. Now, because we're using saw waves, there's a lot of information going on. What we're going to do is we're going to filter both parts of the synth at the same time. So if we switch back to part B's got its own filter. What we need to do is switch this one off, go back to part A, and we're going to set the filter on part A to input both oscillators. So the oscillators from part A, and if you look here, the oscillators from part B are both going through this filter. And what we're going to do then is choose a low pass filter. And we're going to do a similar kind of envelope as we've used before on the filter envelope. So let's choose cutoff A and B and give this some value and a little bit of release, and the decay is going to be very similar to what we've used before. And let's tweak this as we did before. In fact, let's tweak it while we've got some sound going on. So let's create a MIDI clip, find the notes we're using, and I think what we'll do is we'll take this down to just 1 bar, because we're just going to loop 1 bar, and let's just do like a standard trance rolling bass line. Okay, let's see what that sounds like. Yep, we've all heard that before. So let's go back to silent and start tweaking these envelopes a little bit. Okay, so this is really similar to the psytrance bassline we just did, except that with the psytrance bassline we just used a single saw wave. We took it down an octave and we just used a single saw wave. In this instance we've used 3 oscillators, and we've got 2 saw waves set an octave apart, and then a third saw wave which we've stacked with 5 voices, and then we've detuned it, so that thickens the sound out quite a lot, and the sound you get at the end of it's very different. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bit of EQ, and even though this is a bass sound, I'm going to take some of this bass away, because we don't necessarily need this kind of bass sound to be thudding away in the sub bass region. And what I'm also going to do is give this a little bit of delay. Now I will use probably an 1/8 note on one side and an 1/8 dotted on the other side, and we're going to give it some low cut because we don't want the delay right down in the bottom end either. Give it just a little bit of feedback and some width and see what this sounds like. Okay, that sounded all right to me. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign the mod wheel, and I'm going to assign that to open up the cutoff, the filter cutoff. And let's give this so much. Okay, let's start this again. So you can see what's happening is as I'm opening up the mod wheel, sorry, as I'm pushing up the mod wheel, the filter's opening up as well. Right, let's see what this sounds like with all the other bits and pieces. I'm not sure if it's going to be loud enough or quiet enough. Let's have a look. Needs a bit of volume compared to the other things. Alright, that's sounding okay too. I mean, what you'd probably do with a sound like this is, let's go back to the MIDI clip, is we would extend this out again. Oh, no, too much. And we will duplicate this a few times. And let's duplicate this whole loop. And just swap the notes around a bit to give it some more movement. So let's try that. Okay, so there's your standard commonplace all-round bass sound that you can use for tons of different types of trance. I mean, it will underpin a load of tracks that you've heard before. It's quite similar to the one in Between the Rays, that Auden Nelson track. In fact, I'm going to do that lead later because I love that lead. It's used in rolling bass lines and these kind of octave rolling bass lines, and it's useful for so many things. Now, what I think I'll do next is to swap things up a bit. I'm going to create another instance of Silence. No, actually, I'll do it in Anna. Where's Anna? Down here. Here we go. And what I'll do this time is I'll do like a bassy pad, like the Cold Harbour pads. And we're going to need a couple of saw waves here, so let's just solo this. And with Anna, the reason I chose Anna is because there's different kinds of saw waves in Anna. So we'll choose the standard one to start with, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it an octave, and I'm going to give it 5 or 6 voices and detune it slightly. Let's just turn the volume down, because as you add voices it gets loud. And just a little bit of width. Now, can you hear that phasing sound? That's because we've got retrigger switched on. For this sound, we don't want retrigger switched on, so we'll lose that. Right, what we'll do is we'll switch over to oscillator 2, and we're going to choose a different saw wave this time. I think we've got Moog and Prophet 5 saw. So I'm going to choose the Prophet saw. And I'm just going to drop the volume on oscillator 1 for a second. Come back to the Prophet saw, and this time we will choose, let's choose 4 voices for this one. Drop it an octave again, and we'll detune it, but we'll try and make it sound a little bit different. Lose the retrigger again. Yeah, I think that sounds different than the original one. Let's feed the original oscillator back in. Yep, that's sounding good. So if you think way back to when we looked at the architecture and we looked at the mixer section, this is what we're using here. We're using the volume control on each oscillator to blend the two sounds together. Right, what we'll do next is we need to run this through a low pass filter. So let's pick one. I might try the low pass with drive. Now, if you recall, some synths have got drive knobs on the filters so that you can add drive, whereas Anna, it's got drive and distortion algorithms built into the filters. So if we choose this low pass with drive, I'm not sure if this is going to be the one we use, but let's try it. And I believe from memory you add drive with the resonance knob. Yeah, you can hear that distorting a bit. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to use in this case, but we'll try it for now. In fact, I know it's not, so let's leave that off for now. Just give it a little bit. Right, what we need to do next is we need to add some chorus. And what chorus does is it thickens the sound out. This dial here controls how many, they're called poles, or how many instances of the sound we have running against each other. And then you've got width. We don't want the sound too wide because it's a bass sound. This is how deep the chorus effect goes. We don't want that too deep. This is how fast the chorus effect is, and we want this fairly slow, and then you've got a dry wet knob. So let's switch the chorus on and take the dial all the way down here. So that's thickened the sound up a little bit. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the oscillators and give it a little bit more detune. And then we can drop the cutoff down a little bit more. Okay. One control we've not looked at yet is portamento or glide. So we're going to take a look at that now because we use it in this sound. Now what this means is when you press two notes, it will slide between the two notes rather than jumping from one note to the other. So if I turn the portamento value up, this is the amount of slide you get. And what legato means is when you hold one note down, then when you press another note down, it'll slide between those two notes. So let's play the bottom note, and then we'll play another note whilst holding the first note down. And you can hear it slide. And if you switch legato off and choose slide, it will actually create that slide whether you hold the first note down or not. So we'll play the first note, and then the second note. And you can hear it slide in between the notes even though you haven't got one already held down. But for this sound, we want the legato switched on, and we don't want that much. Probably around here. Maybe a bit less. I'm not sure if I'm liking this chorus because it's actually dropping the volume quite a lot. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some delay, which is quite odd for a bass sound, you might think, but the bass sound's quite wide anyway. So let's take the delay. We want quite a fairly slow delay. We don't want it that wide, so we're going to take the pan down left and right. We'll high pass this delay a bit because we don't want really, really low frequencies panning left and right. And give it a little bit of feedback and put the dry up a little bit more than that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try another low pass filter. I'm not convinced that's the right one, so let's try a 4-pole. And that's much better. That's what we're looking for. So this sound is you'll hear this a lot in trance breakdowns. So when you've got all the drums and the melodies and the hats fall away, and you're left with some atmospherics and some pad sounds, and quite often some vocal sounds chirping off in the background. This is the kind of sound that you'll hear underpinning everything. It's a really beefy, powerful sound, and it's really atmospheric. And you've got to be careful with this sound because it does occupy up a load of frequencies, but it's so useful for so many things. So there we are. We've looked at three fairly simple bass sounds. We've looked at a single oscillator psytrance. We've looked at a multi-oscillator trance stroke dance stroke we will do everything with this bass. And then we've looked at a bassy pad. And I think what we're going to do in the next video is we might take a look at some leads, and we'll move away from saw waves a little bit and start looking at the other waves as well. So I'll see you there.